Greetings and welcome back to the World Numismatic News as we now continue our look at the Lincoln cent varieties, this time from 1956. In 1956, the San Francisco Mint was officially not striking coins anymore, so we only have Denver and Philadelphia to focus our attention on for now. But despite that, there are still plenty of varieties to look for, with the Denver Mint breaching a mintage figure of 1 billion coins for the first time in its history. So let's start at the Denver Mint with the first of several repunched mint mark varieties to look for. On this coin, the initial and the final impressions are completely separated from one another. Look towards the south of the D mint mark, to where the outline of what was once a faint impression of an initial D can be seen. Now, naturally, a coin that displays the initial placement of the D clearer will be worth more, but even in a lower grade and in a later die state like this, the variety remains identifiable in the right light. So be diligent when looking for this coin. And if you are searching for this variety specifically, then remember that the placement of the final mint mark is extremely high, almost level with the tail of the 5. In 2021, a beautiful example of this variety was sold at auction, graded as MS67 Red by PCGS and sold at auction for the sum of $1,620. Now, there is also another example where complete separation between the initial and the final mint mark is seen. In this coin, the initial placement of the D was actually towards the northwest, where the D was placed in or on the tail of the number 9 in the date. This can be a fairly difficult coin to identify as the initial impression is extremely faint, even on an ideal example of the variety. The best place to look is just below the tail of the 9 and due west of the top serif of the D. This was the placement of the bottom horizontal portion of the D and remains the most resilient part of the initial placement. And in a lower die state coin, it is practically the only part of the initial mint mark that still remains readily identifiable. And in 2023, there was a PCGS graded coin with a grade of MS66 plus red that was sold at auction for the amount of $288. Then we come to the strongest and definitely the most well-known repunched mint mark for this issue. What I suppose you could call the main or the FS501 repunched mint mark variety here. Here, the repunching really is quite unmistakable. The initial D was struck in directly towards the west and slightly tilted from the main mint mark's position. The initial impression was also very strong, and as such, the entire vertical portion towards the left and both serifs are clearly still seen on this variety. For this coin, a beautiful example graded as MS67 Red by PCGS was sold at auction in 2023 for the total sale price of $1,425. Now, to be completely clear, while we look at some of the more minor varieties, there are, in fact, a little more than a dozen additional repunched mint mark varieties that are also known to exist for this issue. But the 3 that we just looked at in detail are the only ones that have really enjoyed widespread market appeal. PCGS and CACG will currently only accept those 3 coins as varieties, while NGC would slab about 7 coins in total, and Anax, as usual, is a little more accommodating. But again, the problem is that most of the more minor varieties don't really get the flashy prices when you try to sell them. But enough of that. Let's move on to the Philadelphia Mint from there. And here we have two varieties, not on the circulation strike coins, but rather on the proof coins for this date. The first of which is a doubled reverse. The doubling here took place in such a way that the doubling displays due south on the letters of United States of America. You can especially notice it towards the bottoms of the letters, and practically every single letter is affected in this way as well. In addition to that, the wheat stalks, more specifically the stems of the wheat stalks, are also doubled in much the same manner as just described. For this coin, a CACG graded Proof 67 red example was sold at auction in 2025 for $759, while the auction record was absolutely shattered when a PCGS graded coin, graded as Proof 67 red, but this time with the coveted deep cameo designation as well, was sold at auction in 2025 for an astounding $7,593. And then the next variety is a doubled obverse coin instead, also from the Proof 1956 Lincoln Cent. Here the doubling on the coin is seen on the obverse letters the best, beginning with the letters of In God We Trust. We can see doubling on the T and the R of trust towards the top, where clear separation lines should be seen with minimal effort. The U of trust is also a lot thicker towards the bottom than it should normally be. The same doubling towards the top of the letters can then also be seen to the letters of God We, with strong separation lines in all cases. From there, you can then also take a look at the letters of Liberty. Now, the doubling is not quite as clear in this case, but it is definitely still present. The T and Y seem to display the doubling the best in this case, where the letters are largely doubled towards the northwest. The doubling here also makes the I of Liberty seem as though it is lopsided or larger towards the top than from the bottom. Another interesting thing to note about this particular coin is the presence of a small semicircular or half-moon shaped die gouge on the rim of the coin at around the 7 o'clock position, just towards the right of Lincoln's shoulder. Now for this variety, we had a coin in 2023 sold in a PCGS slab with the grade of Proof 67 red that was sold at auction for $720. Subscribe to WNN and feel free to watch another video about the 1955 Lincoln penny varieties right here next. For the World Numismatic News, I am Numisman saying thank you for watching, keep collecting, and have a fantastic day.